Hello and welcome to the Whole Being Healing podcast. I am Lisa Warner, author of The Simplicity of Self-Healing and co-creator of Lisa and Maura's Magical Mystery School for Whole Being Healers.
And I'm Maura and I am co-author of The Seven Steps to Successful Relationships, along with my husband Keith, and co-creator with Lisa of Lisa and Maura's Magical Mystery School for Whole Being Healers and the Whole Being Healing Transformational Experience. And we are so excited to be with you here today and with our beautiful guest. Our guest today is a beautiful man that when my husband Keith first met you, Mark, my awareness was that the two of you were just drawn together like a magnet, and you had this powerful soul connection. I remember when Keith came and told me, "Okay, there's this guy, and we've connected," and I was just like, "Okay." And then I met you, and of course, I immediately felt your beautiful energy. And then Mark was also a co author with me and others in our award winning best selling book, The Inside Effects How the Body Heals Itself, Volume 1. And then Lisa was featured in Volume 2 of that. And of course, she was also featured in the Inside Effects documentary film before that. And lots more since then. Lots going on with all of us, right? So, Mark, I'm really glad you're here, and Lisa's going to introduce everyone to you officially and professionally now.
Awesome. Thanks. Thrilled to be here.
We're happy to have you. So, Mark Hattas helps people live the principles Jesus taught, bringing the Bible back into practical practice for restored health, purpose, and vigor for life. After building and selling a successful tech company, Mark was diagnosed with bipolar I disorder and later healed. His inspired transformation opened the door to coaching, writing, speaking, and more. By 2026, he authored or co-authored 9 books, amassing over 1 dozen awards and multiple #1 international bestsellers. Throughout his journey, Mark's spiritual gifts awakened, with stories pouring through him as downloads from God. His recent series, The O Coalition, is a spiritual fiction series of 11 books that helps people practice and master the tools Mark used to get healthy. The series begins with The Lowly Prophet, offering profound insights for transformation and personal growth. Mark is a certified mental performance coach and serial entrepreneur. He was honored with a PhD in entrepreneurship and business from TIUA School of Business, recognizing his achievements in executive and mental performance coaching, entrepreneurship, business, and charitable contributions to mental health. He shares his life journey with his wife, Liz, and their 5 children. You can begin reading Mark's latest book for free at theocoalition.com/books. Welcome, Mark.
Great to be here. Thank you.
So, we like to start these conversations with kind of the end of our mission statement. So, our mission focuses on shifting people from fear to love, activating their ability to self heal, and aligning them with their soul purpose. And so, we would love to have you share about not only about your soul purpose and where you are now with that, but we'd love to hear you share about the path, the journey that you've taken to get to where you are now with that. And of course, it's going to be moving on into the future and continuing to expand. But yeah, we'd love to hear about your path getting there.
Yeah, so the soul purpose was introduced to me while I was going through what most people would call this mental health crisis. And I remember sitting in my dining room, uh, it was 2011, and I had this, which might sound strange to some people, but I had this conversation with Mary, Jesus's mother, and I had never had a conversation like that. It was very loving and beautiful and telepathic, is how I was receiving it. And I was in this state of unification, if you will. And I think a lot of people who go through a quote unquote mental health crisis are actually coming back into their wholeness. And it's the fight and the resistance of coming back into the wholeness that makes it look a little bit wacky at times and can be, rather daunting for some. And it was for me, for sure. Between 2011 and 15, I had 3 hospitalizations. Was navigating this, married with 5 kids. It was a very difficult and challenging ordeal. But right at the beginning there was when I had these mystical experiences. There were dozens of them. And this particular one, I was talking to Mary and I said, "Hey, what is this?" And she said, "This is the state of Jesus." And I just kind of knew with the words what that meant. But for anyone who doesn't have a reference point, Jesus lived in a way that invited all of us to come into that union relationship with our Creator, that oneness, that wholeness. And the path that we go on is our own unique journey. But there's some similarities, there's some commonalities of what people go through. And one of them is to let the defenses down so that we can restore, reconcile, be unified within our own being until there's nothing left to unify. It's all there. It's like we are it, the full expression of who we are, who we can be. And so what Mary was telling me is that uh, this was what I was experiencing. Now, could I stay there? No. I was going in and out of it, right? In and out of the hospital. I was in and out of this relationship. But what she planted a seed in me was that we could be there all the time. And so that became my mantra. It's like, well, what if I could be here all the time? What would that look like? And as insanity became more and more sane, and I was able to ground in that relationship with who I am and who God is, and really experience that more fully, there was I guess it's a remembrance, that started to come online that, hey, we're here to all do this. This isn't like Mark's someone special, or Maura or Lisa that we're special. It's like, no, we came here to do this. We chose to do this. And so if we chose to do this, we look for who is our model? Like, where is it that we can seek opportunities to dismantle the dissociated parts, the divided parts, and come back into full integrated self. And that's really my purpose, is to share through stories, through coaching, through practices, mechanisms that support people in the courage to go into their own healing journey. And I can't do it for them. It's interesting because at times I'll get insights for people, and I do my best to help them get their own insights. Right? I'm not being, my book is called The Lowly Prophet, the first book in the series. It's not that I'm, you know, prophetically sharing what's happening in the future, but prophet really is about the word. Like, God's giving us a word. And oftentimes if we're in relationship with someone, we'll have a word for somebody. And it doesn't mean that someone should just take that word and act, impulsively on it. It's to take that word and take it to prayer. Like, what does that mean? What does that mean for the person? Why is that coming up? Because we're all in this together. We're all supporting each other. There's no one that's better than or less. There might be people that are kind of further down the road on the journey calling back, like, hey, if you go this way, you'll see 3 waterfalls. It's really beautiful. Or you can go that way, whatever you'd like to do, because you'll have your own journey. But
Yeah.
the evidence of healing through my process has been significant. I'm fully well since 2015. I've been off all medication, started a nonprofit to help people understand what the possibilities are with mental health, and brought in practitioners. And we have a podcast that Dr. Tim Hayes, he's a PsyD, he interviews countless numbers of people who do healing work, integrative functional. But that's part of it. And that's one of my realizations, is that there's, and my word is integration, alignment and integration. Like, that's what we're doing. So when someone's fully integrated, mental health issues tend to go away. Now, they might need some body support. You might have to heal the gut, get some nutrients to the brain, and do some things that are necessary to unwind the twistedness of beliefs and ideas so that you're back into a framework that's going to be healthy. But that's part of the journey. That's the joy of the journey. So when an obstacle comes up, it's like, wait, this obstacle is part of my growth. This obstacle is part of my journey. Like, what is it teaching me? And we all will have them. They all will be exactly what we need to unwind the past for our own individual life and that we might have carried forward from our ancestors. So it's here. It's on. There's no better time to be alive than right now because there's a lot going on. We got a lot of work that, needs to happen and there's a preparation what you're doing, the things that I've been led to do, and I see so many that are being led to create these fundamental assets, if you will, because we're ushering in, and one of the last things I'll say on this before I pause is that Mary had shared with me where this is going. Because I said, well, how many people are experiencing this? And she gave me a number, and she said, but soon there will be this number. I'm not going to put it on a public podcast, but this number. And when that number is hit, it's game over. It's the catalyst where everybody else will kind of experience the quickening of it. But there's those early people that came before us that spent lifetimes going through what was necessary, including Jesus, to get us to a place where we could recognize, like, wait, there's really nothing else to do. Like, this is the thing. And it's only from that aligned center that we can actually live. There's a lot of people that are I don't watch any of those movies where they have zombies and things. It's just not my thing. But that's sort of like the zombie apocalypse is sort of what's happening. We've got a lot of people numb and numbing and not really alive. It's like, hey, it's time to wake up and live.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. So much of what you said, it's so beautiful and it's so in alignment with what Lisa and I have been through and what we teach. And one thing that really struck me was toward the beginning of it when you were talking about the healing process. And you're talking, well, first you were talking about what you were experiencing, you know, with your mental health. And I know because we've all been conditioned to see things as disease and see that and kind of in sort of a war model of something's attacking, it needs to be, I need to defend myself, or I need to fight against it, um, or something's wrong with me and I need to be fixed. And I love how you shared about the sort of what I would have called in the past surrendering to it, but I think of it now more as like a leaning in and embracing and what you said, integrating, right? And I remember years ago when I started to um, what I wanted to share was when when we when we either get what we would call, when we experience what we would call a cold or the flu, or we intentionally do a detox, a cleanse, a fast, the things that come up physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually can be very intense, and it doesn't feel good. It's like, I don't want this. But there's that point where your body is like, well, this is what I'm doing right now. And at a certain point, even especially if it's like a really intense one, this is what I've observed. I'm observing it more and more, right? You get to this point where you're like, oh, okay, I have to stop thinking about the thing that I'm supposed to be doing right now because this is what my body's doing. I just need to embrace it. I need to accept it. And like the more you do that, the more you can start to see, oh, there's something going on here that's beautiful. There's something going on here that's important. It's not, my body's not, doing something wrong.
Hmm.
It's doing something right.
Hmm.
So, yeah, Lisa, you want to share anything?
Yeah, what you just said was like it was that was probably the biggest realization of my life at that time when I was going through my cancer experience. And I wouldn't go the medical model. And so I was sitting every day, I would sit and I would just ask, what do I need to know about this in order for it to heal? And one day sitting in my meditation, it was just like whoosh, like this whole clarity download came in. And I was like, hey, Lisa, your body is not doing anything wrong. Your body's doing exactly what it's supposed to do under the given circumstances. You're not being attacked by anything. Just integrate, allow your body to do what you do. Stop thinking about this as something bad, something being attacked. Your body is intelligent. It knows what to do. Let it do its thing and trust it. And that's what shifted everything for me.
Yeah, there was a woman who early on, when I was healthy and doing some coaching, she was referred to me, and she had been seeing things with her physical eye that weren't there, that other people couldn't see, right? She doesn't like the word hallucination, but that's what we would call it, at least the reference I have. And we got to a place in the process, it was about 2.5 hours of just not trying to heal it, but just inquiring, like, hey, what are you here for? Like, what's the message? And she was getting the messages and then tapped into some pretty deep healing. And once she got the messages, the hallucinations went away. And then about 3 months later, she called and they had come back. And I said, well, do you remember what we did? And she, of course, when someone's in it, they're not always remembering all the details. She's like, no, I don't remember. And I said, well, let's do it again. So we did it again. 45 minutes later, that hallucination, she got the message, that hallucination went away. And I said this to her. I said, look, your body knows that if you ignore the messages that it's trying to tell you, if your spirit is being ignored, that your physiology changes in order to show you something that you can't ignore. And then once you get the message, it goes away. So you see the rhythm, the path. And she's like, yeah. So that was, I don't know, 12 years ago or something like that. And the hallucinations haven't been back because she started to pay more attention to what's going on. But our systems will find a way, whether it's cancer, hallucinations, depression, mania, our systems will find a way to get our attention if we ignore. And one of the things that happened for me in '06 was the first time I had heard what I would say heard God, from an inner voice standpoint. And it broke through the clutter of my busyness. And the message was, Mark, it's time to sell the company. And there was a little bit more to it, but it was time to sell the company. Da, da, da. I'm like, well, I don't know how to do that. I said, if this is God, then you're going to have to figure that out. Show me the way. And I was shown the way. And it wasn't until hindsight that I realized, like, oh, wow, that happened. There's something beyond what I know this physical life to be, and I was hungry to find out more. I wanted more. Like, what was that? What spoke to me? And so it led me to this inner realization of who I really am. But it did require a pretty significant shift, right? Because if this is the core of who we are, if this represents the core, and I had shifted and created these masks over here that I had to uphold as executive and entrepreneur and CEO and all this stuff, it's like, well, that all came crashing down, and gave me an opportunity to reconnect. Well, in the crashing down, there was, in the reconnection, it's like any kind of suppressed energy, it's going to come strong. And so I was experiencing things that were pretty wild in terms of what most people would experience daily life as, but it was all quite normal, right? It was diagnosed as a mental health challenge, but it was quite normal in terms of my reference today. It's like, well, that makes sense. Like, of course that's going to happen. You suppress something and divide enough, the gravitational pull is back toward center. It's back toward who we are. So the further I go out, the more powerful that force is going to come back in. But then in the union, now those things that looked insane all of a sudden become integrated and become part of the normalcy of life, where God was this outside separate thing. Over time, it was 2015 when I was invited by my son to start telling him stories. And after a few stories, I heard that same inner voice say, Mark, don't tell him a story, allow the story to come. And that was part of this core, like inviting me further, 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 further in, right? And we had it's everyone is going to have their own unique experience. But for me, it led me to the realization that there's nothing more that I want to do than help other people find their path to integrated self. Because the joy, the awe, it's amazing. It's so incredible. Nothing of this world can provide any amount of closeness to what the joy is of an integrated self.
That's so true. And it's like I have to do more and more of that because I have this built-in forgetter that just forgets what just happened yesterday and how amazing it was. And it wants to go into, oh boy, now I have to deal with this and this. It's like, no, I get to do this. So I just fill my calendar,
Oh,
right?
good.
Classes and calls and podcasts like this and, whatever we can do. Like, that's what we're here for. That's why it feels so good.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that appreciation of what we are doing, right? When we lean in, as you mentioned, Maura, and we experience something of that, integrated nature, it's like that's the time to celebrate that. Not to compare or say, well, it should be or any of that. It's just to celebrate, like, oh wait, yeah, yesterday this happened. I got to experience that. And so what is it that I'm going to do today? And if that day's a busy day, great. If that day's an empty day, whatever it is that you most need, just as you had mentioned, Lisa, with your cancer, like if we keep asking, like, well, what's optimal right now? And sometimes we're doing it for our own healing process. And when we get to the healed side, it's often that we're being invited to do something on behalf of others. And it's never what we think it is. It's not, I'm invited today. I'm going to a work thing that I was invited into. And I kept checking in, like, do I go to this thing? There's people flying in, and it's a company that I don't work for, but have done work with. And I got a phone call, and I just knew, like, yeah, I will be there. I'll be there Monday afternoon and all day Tuesday. And I don't know why, but it's probably not because of some brilliant thing I'm going to add necessarily to their work thing. It's probably because of what I do best. Like maybe it's just creating a groundedness on a topic, or there's something that is needed in that moment, and we don't know, and we don't need to. We can just surrender in, lean in, and trust that okay, if that's where I'm to be, then I already have everything I need in order to show up. And if there is any discord, we'll know it. And that's where prayer and meditation, your daily practice, we all take showers pretty much every day, right? Well, we got to do this every day. And that meditative state, it's like, well, is there anything I need to be aware of before I go to this meeting? And we'll get it, right? It could be, yeah, like let go of a judgment, or, just be there and listen, or bring this book, or prepare these 4 points. Whatever it is that we need to do, we'll get it, right? But it takes that time to be in that pure energy to allow. And then once we get it, now when we show up, we're bringing all that for the entirety of everyone involved. And it's a beautiful process. It's a beautiful experience. It's a wonderful life. Coming off of the Christmas season, we just watched that movie, and it reminds me of like, yes, like there's so much happening beyond what we understand. Like just trust, trust, trust. Keep going.
Yep. And often just being there, sometimes we forget, like just our presence. If we feel called to be somewhere, yes, there may be a reason, there may be something we're supposed to do or say or something we're supposed to connect with. or support, and maybe not. Maybe we're just supposed to be there because when we are making that connection daily, when we are in that space of being guided and of being in peace and love and service, it's felt. We're bringing that to wherever we are,
Yeah.
and whoever needs it will feel it and they'll get whatever they need to get.
Yeah, and I love how you described the feeling once we are integrated again and we start to just feel amazing. We start to feel good again in our bodies. And this is the whole healing process. It's not about pills and procedures and all of that stuff and expert advice and follow doctor's orders. It's about find who you are, go back inside. When I was a very little girl, I had some mystical experiences, so to speak. I was like 2 years old, and I could look out at the world and I could see that people were in the exact space that you were describing, like the zombie space. And to me, it was terrifying. I was like, oh my gosh, why did I get sent here to this world that's filled with zombies? People don't know who they are. They're just walking around kind of vacant. But then when I had my awakening, your body's doing what it's supposed to do, and was like, oh, wait a second. I've been being the zombie. I've been the one who has not been being aware of who I am. I have strayed from center, and it's in that coming back to center that we start to feel good again. We start to trust ourselves. We start to recognize, oh my gosh, I'm brilliant. My body's brilliant. I'm a being of light. I'm supposed to be brilliant. I'm supposed to be radiant because it's the nature of who I am. And we start to feel lighter. We start to feel more joyful. And life becomes a completely different experience.
It does. It does. And it's not always roses, right? I mean, there are moments.
Absolutely.
This isn't a big one, but it's a great story. So on Friday, I was supposed to drive 5 hours and go to this workshop in Michigan that was going to take place on Saturday. And when I woke up, I'm like, "Ah, I don't want to go." It's just one of those, should I go? Should I stay? Like, just wasn't feeling up to going. And so I knew something was moving. So I closed my eyes and I just meditated. It was probably about 30, 40 minutes. And suddenly something shifted. I got up and I started packing, and my wife's like, "So you're going?" I'm like, "I guess I am." So I end up going, and it was really a great workshop. But what was really interesting is there was a young woman there, and she had been going through a big struggle. She had had suicidal thoughts that morning. Of course, we didn't know all this until later. And she had been diagnosed with bipolar, and she's been struggling through life since her dad had passed. And one of the things that came up was after the event, the person organizing the event said, "Hey, a couple of us are going to lunch. How about we go to lunch?" And this young woman joined us at lunch. So we're sitting there chatting, and her mom was there as well. And I started to share a story in response to something she had asked. And she noticed that her daughter wasn't listening. She was on her phone, and she said, "Hey, you need to listen to Mark, because she knew this, and the mom knew the story from before. So she's like, you need to listen to Mark." She knew it was going to be helpful for her daughter. And so we just have this conversation. It opens up that it brings such a degree of hope, right? Where she had no hope, where she felt like no one understood. And I was sharing some things that she said, "Oh." And one thing that really caught her attention, and it caught her attention so much that I thought I'd share it here because it might help other people. I said, "Well, bipolar uses the language of metaphor." And she said, "Wait, say that again?" I said, "Well, when someone's in a manic kind of experience, everything's a metaphor. So the issue is that the people that are around them and the person themselves take it literally. So, I mean, to give you this, as if anyone watching didn't think I was a little strange enough. when I was in my height of my first manic experience, I had this experience of being in the Garden of Gethsemane. And this was like at the culmination of a week of manic energy, like getting to the height of heights. And the paramedics were there. They're in my hallway out, and one of the guys finally he rolls his eyes. He starts putting on rubber gloves because they're going to grab me. And he's like, "Okay, Mark, yeah, we're in the Garden of Gethsemane." And I could see he was being dismissive. And I said, "No, I'm not saying that I literally think I'm in the Garden of Gethsemane. I said that there's this sense of closeness with Christ at that moment of surrender." And that's what I was experiencing. Right now, he didn't give me the time because they grabbed me and hauled me into the ambulance at that point. But that's what was happening. And so, had someone been more conscious as in that moment and said, "Hey, look, Mark." Now, I didn't know this at the time, but had someone said, "Mark, you're experiencing something that might be a metaphor. What does that metaphor mean? Like, what does it mean to you? Why are you saying what you're saying?" Now it would have given me a level to go deeper and reveal to myself because I didn't even have the consciousness. That's why metaphors are used. It's bringing to the surface the things that are hidden in a way we can experience it without confronting our objectors, right? The internal objectors that might lock things down again. It's like the metaphors are helping bring things up that have to come up. So if we drug it and suppress it and tell people they're insane if they think these things, like we're just stuffing collectively trauma that has to surface. It has to surface. If it doesn't surface in this generation, it'll surface in the next generation. And the Bible says, these sins of the father will be passed forward 3 and 4 generations. Well, that wasn't like God's a mean God and he's going to make everyone suffer. It's like, no, that's the biology of error. It gets passed down until someone says, "Hey, you know what? I got this. I'm willing." Right. And so the willingness as society is that we have to get to a place where we say, "Hey, you know what? If someone's going through a manic experience and they're speaking in metaphors, how do we speak to them? How do we invite them into a healthy relationship with what they're experiencing?" And not that everyone who's had a manic experience would agree with what I just said, but a lot. And I've done a lot of coaching with people and I'm not a therapist, but just hearing people out and giving them hope. Like, hey, if I can do it, you can do it. If I can get healthy, you can get healthy. Like your journey might be a little different than mine, but you can get there. But this particular piece for her was really significant. And I look at that whole weekend, and it was a great weekend when I came back yesterday. But I look at that moment, that one moment, right, where it's just like, wait, can you repeat that? What do you mean about bipolar speaks in metaphors? That's a game changer, right, for her. And maybe it will be for others, but I think it is something that as a society we could learn from and start to change the way that we care and respond when someone's going through a crisis.
Yeah. One of the toughest things is to get for each of us, and then for those of us who are leaders supporting others in allowing their own healing process, is to be able to overcome the fear part of it. Because the fear makes us want to, oh, I need help. I need someone. But then the help, if it comes in the form of conventional methods, is not always helpful. Ultimately, it might seem helpful in the moment, but it doesn't always. It's like you're sharing. It's not dealing with the root cause. It's not dealing with what's trying to be expressed, what's trying to be integrated, what's trying to be cleared. And yeah, so anything that we can say and share, and like you said, your own experience really does help others so much when they know, okay, you've been through this, this isn't just some theory that's being shared with me. This is real. Um, and anything that you can tell someone that can get them to kind of even momentarily shift out of that fear and into something else that they can notice, that they can learn from, they can observe, they can have an awareness. Um, yeah, and feel a connection to maybe, because we all have that thing inside of us that knows. It's not a belief, it's not a programmed thought. It's the part that's connected to our creator. It's the part that's connected to what's real, and we can feel it when it shows up.
Yeah.
So whatever we can bring to someone that can get them to feel that, right? Is gonna move move them in that direction.
Yeah. Yeah. And we have such a unique experience right now to bring awareness to the variety. And you've done a great job, with the inside effects and the podcast and bringing to light, like, hey, how do people think about this in general from different perspectives? So we can see, like, hey, it's not that I have to do it like Maura or Lisa or Mark or anybody else. Like, we all have our own unique process. But what is consistent is there's a very good amount of evidence to demonstrate that within each of us is a neural network that, when activated, will lead someone to happiness and well-being. There's like this inner guidance, that needs to be tuned. And part of the tuning is you got to come back into the place where the tuning needs to happen, right? We've got to return and restore to the center, as you mentioned earlier, Lisa, to that center. And in that center, it's like, okay, now all the errors of our past can start to be unwound, and the effects of our errors can be dismantled, and we can leave behind the things that we had when we were younger at a different time, strategies we used in trauma that really aren't necessary for regular daily life. We can start to release and release and release and release and get to this place where now divine wisdom brings us forward. And all that energy can be funneled through like this center point of expansion. And so we can't expand out unless we receive that energy coming in, that restorative energy. And I think that one of the things that we're going to see on the planet, and we are seeing the beginnings of it over the last decade or couple decades, is we're seeing that the change is so significant that it's harder and harder for people who aren't doing it. It's overwhelming, it's scary. And instead of doing their own inner work, there's a lot of expression that's reflecting the inner division. And so, as that expression of the inner division is being played out on stage,
Mhm.
and we see people, dying and hurting and warring and all the things that we see as the manifestation of the dividedness, it's like, well, that has to happen because the outer world is always going to mirror the inner. So if our inner worlds are divided, well, of course the outer world's going to manifest and demonstrate that. So it's not wrong. It's the obvious manifestation. Just like the woman I shared earlier who was experiencing hallucinations. She wasn't wrong. There wasn't anything wrong. It was a perfect expression of helping her see what she was unwilling to see so that then she could wake up. And we can wake up with a whisper, or we can wake up with a really loud scream. And it's like, which one do you want? Like, I'd rather wake up with a whisper. So if something's off, like, may I spend the time to hear the whisper? And then we choose to honor it or not,
Yeah.
right? Are we going to honor the whisper? And if we honor the whisper, my experience is that that usually works out really, 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 really well. And when we dishonor it, we're creating more dividedness in us. And so then we're going to see the manifestation of the dishonoring. And that's not bad. It's the physics, right, of the law of how it works. It's like, so what do? We honor, like honor who it is we truly are. And if we can honor that, now we're honoring God. Like that is the truth of it. But it's not honoring the brain's, chemistry of desire that's in the divided state. It's honoring the whole union relationship of who we are, which is always going to be one with our creator. It's always whole. And so that you can trust. Well, if you don't know how to get there, if you don't understand which is which, then you just have a little bit more of a journey to go on to express yourself more fully. And so it's a time to go within. That's a time to take the weekend and go on a program and start to go deeper and learn about who you are, discover self. And as you come back into alignment, you'll be able to recognize what that feels like and sounds like and looks like when it is in a whole integrated state. It's so fun. And I know the two of you are very, very aware of all this and but it's fun to talk about.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
that's what we're here for.
There's a lot of money being made on the division, and there's a lot of, the systems that are set up are built on that division. And this is what's wrong with you, and here's the pill for the solution. And it's really the solution always comes from inside. There's never the solution out there because whatever is showing up in the physical realm has come through from the inside. So either we
It's
are
all there.
creating from alignment with the truth of who we are, or we're creating from the misalignment. So it's always coming back into alignment is the actual answer.
Absolutely. And in the alignment, and I know you're saying this as well, there are things that then happen in the world and that we interact with in the world. So it's not like we go into a cave and everything happens within us, separate from it. That's why I love the word integration. It's because it's like some people will go to a spiritual realm, which I did for a while. Like, oh, I want to be in this divine spiritual world, and the other world's like, that's crap. It's like, no, that was off as well. It's the integration of we're here. Like we get to be whole while here. And when that happens, then the world will reflect that too. But we'll be guided to things in the world, right? I'm sure there were things that when I went through my process that wouldn't have happened had I not found solutions in the world that supported the inspired action, right? It's like it was inspired to, oh, go to this doctor or go here or go there. It's like to find those right connections, the right foods, the right process. And physical is certainly part of the healing process and the restorative process. And these
Yeah,
are these are temples, right? They need to be aligned. They got to be healthy.
yep. And when we utilize that the guidance that well, we are guided to the ones to support us and teach us about that so that then we can learn even more to be guided from our within ourselves of what our bodies need. It just gets more and more refined. Um, and I'm just I'm wanting to ask about your experience with you were talking about the whisper, listening to the whisper, right? And the more you listen to that, you said it's like so huge because it once you hear it, then it's like, oh, okay, so I can say more. I can talk a little clearer. I can be a little more. And so have you noticed with the people that you've worked with that they've had experiences of sort of going from um, I'm scared of these voices in my head or whatever it is to, oh, I'm being guided, or oh, this is great information and I can utilize this. And, do you want to say any more about that? Because
Yeah,
that's so exciting to me.
I'd say there's two things. There's a lot of distortion, I think, in the world about inner voices, if you will. Um, if I'm divided inside, I'm probably going to hear a variety of different personas that get expressed, right? One could be really fun and gentle, one could be kind of mean and nasty. And so there are labels that people put on those personas and like, oh, that's the devil or that's this or whatever word they want. That's the angel. And it's like it's all you. And when you're fully integrated, you realize that it's coming through as a supportive expression. Even the places that I would say are a little bit darker. And I'll share an example. So when I was in my healing process, I, and by the way, if anyone goes off medication, this will always happen. So I was on medication. It was 2012, I think, or 13, 2013. And I was starting to wean myself off the medication. I didn't tell the doctor at the time. Later, I did it with a doctor, and that's the responsible thing to do. But I was just kind of playing a little bit, like, and as I did, the symptoms come back, right? But the symptoms didn't come back full blown because I didn't completely cut off the medication. I was just self weaning, and I was guided to go down in my basement. And in the basement, we have it's a finished basement. We have a workout room with, a treadmill and some weights and things. And there's this big mirror that goes across the back wall. And my body was kind of moved, if you will, to the center of the mirror. And then I heard that divine guidance, like, hey, go to the right. And I moved over to the right. And as I went to the right, I felt my energy. And by the way, I told my psychiatrist about this later, and he told me that this whole thing's impossible.
Didn't
But
happen.
right, but it did happen. Um, and so I go to the right, and my energy amped up, amped up, amped up until I was in almost a manic state, and my brain started to change the words. So the loving, kind guidance started to shift, and it started to go into this woo-woo, strange, like things didn't quite make sense. It was kind of, I could observe it, right? Because I was feeling it, but observing. And then I heard that inner voice say, go back to center now. It's like, okay, so I go back to center. And then the energy came down, almost like turning up a volume on a stereo and then turning it back down. 12 times that happened. Okay, now go back. I'd experience it. Now go to center. 12 times. And each time was similar in terms of just the distortion of thought. And then I got back to center on the 12th time, and the question came up. It's like, okay, what do you want? I'm like, well, I want balance. I want the center. Like, good. So now let go of trying to get there, because my perception was mania was enlightenment. I somehow connected the experience with enlightenment, and it's like, no, that's not enlightenment. It's a distortion. It really is. I mean, the brain's like moving so freaking fast, but it's not grounded. And so we're off in la la land. And I'm like, no, I want center. And so then the inner voice said, okay, now go to the left. So my body moves to the left, and I feel this denseness, almost like a heavy darkness. And the words coming out of and I was speaking, right, out on both sides, or on the right side. Now I'm going to the left side. And so it was a guttural, ugly, like demonic, like disgusting voice. And it was my voice coming through. I knew it wasn't like someone or some entity, it was me, but it was just the frequency was that. And then the inner voice said, okay, now go back to center. I went back to center. All that went away. I'm back to center. So back and forth 6 times. So on the sixth time, it's like, well, where do you want to be? It's like, I want to be in center. It's like, great. So let go of that, because you've got the polar opposites, right? On any battery, you have a plus and a minus. Well, you don't want to hang out just on the plus side or just on the minus side. You need both in order to create power. And so that was the aha. It's like, oh, I was trying to go back into the manic thing after the first experience. The first thing I think was a spiritual awakening. And then I was like, I want that again. And so, but what I was craving was a manic version of what was really optimal. So now once I recognize, like, oh, I actually want balance, I want center, then the real healing started to occur where I could integrate, integrate, integrate. And shortly after, 6 months later, I was healthy after that, really. I did have one more hospitalization, but I needed it in order to kind of connect all the dots of what was really there and own it. Because when I went and told my doctor and he said, well, Mark, that's impossible. It's like, oh, well, the doctor, he's pretty smart. So maybe I did make it up. So after the third hospitalization in early 2014, I hit such a low. But when I got out, I said, okay, if I'm going to get healthy, I'm going to get healthy. And that's when I started looking for integrative, functional inner work to all work together in harmony to get to that center. And what happened, fast forward, so I was 14, right? So fast forward a year, and this goes exactly to your point, Maura. When my son had asked me to tell him a story, and then after several nights, I heard that, hey, don't tell him a story, allow the story to come. My lips started to move, words started coming out, but it was being told from a deeper place. It wasn't my brain coming up with it. It was coming from this source, and it was this expression. And they were 15-minute stories, roughly. About 16 of them we recorded over the course of weeks. And then suddenly he stopped asking me to tell stories. I went to this business conference. At the business conference, I was asked by a woman to help her with something. And I said, can I tell you a story? The words just came out of my mouth. I didn't know what story I was going to tell. I didn't know any of the stories I was going to tell my son. They just came out. They started flowing. And the point of all this is I was being trained. My son obviously connected, and the Holy Spirit through him led me to listen. And so instead of getting a word here or there, I was getting whole stories, right? And then I'm coaching, getting whole stories for people. And it was very moving for people. And then it was 2016, so a year after that, I heard Mark take out a pad of paper, and I wrote down 14 chapter prompts, and then heard, okay, go downstairs and record it. So I went in the basement, just turned on my phone, recorder, and 90 minutes later, I had the makings of my first book, which is Awakening the Optimal Leader, is a business book, fable. And I was stunned. Like I'd never told a 90-minute story, and it just came out. Well, that matured into, from the verbal, it matured into writing and then typing. And suddenly I'm getting these full downloads of these books, like The Lowly Prophet. Like I couldn't have sat down in 2010 and said, I'm going to write a book, or 2012, I'm going to write a book and here's what it's going to be, and then write it. That would have been awful, and I wouldn't have known what to write. But here I got the insight, hey, Mark, start writing The Lowly Prophet. I'm like, okay, what's that? Right. And I got this download of start writing in 3 weeks, schedule 5 hours a day for 30 days. And suddenly, 9 days into that whole process, I had the draft of The Lowly Prophet. And it was amazing, but I was given it. And then I got the second book in the collection, The Veil Breaker, the third book, Where People Go When They Die in War, just launched in December. And there's 11 in the series. The first 3 have been published. The 5th one I started writing in October. Every one, when I write it, it's like, oh, this is my favorite one. And they're so good. But they're doorways for people to come in through fiction and connect. Like one is a mental health pandemic, another one is more of a spiritual transformation, another one deals with, obviously, the physical and mental wars that are happening externally, internally, with where do people go when they die in war. And it's dismantling the parts in society that have been held up by our own resistance collectively. And so that's what these stories do, is they give doorways for people to come in and say, oh, wait, I'm kind of like that character. And they did that. Maybe I'll try it. Right. And so it just leads people toward hope, toward restorative process. And my plan is to bring these to churches, to schools, to people, to build not a church like a traditional church, but church in terms of a collective coming together to practice the principles that lead to an integrated life. So it does come quicker. Initially it comes with a moment, but it expands. And so I'm giving the example of these books because it's like, yeah, when I talk to God, it's a conversation. I was talking to God for 3-4 hours in the car ride back from Michigan. It's a relationship. And if you cultivate the relationship, it's going to become more like a conversation. And you can trust that, just like my voice, more if you called me on the phone, I'd know it's you, right? Lisa, I wouldn't know necessarily because we just met. But once you build a relationship, like, who it is, when Keith calls you, right? You don't have to say, who is this? And so that relationship, it's like, okay, you have to invest time in order to build that. But the more you build it, the more you'll be able to hear. And it can start with this simple declaration that, hey, I want that. I want a relationship. I don't, and if you just say that, anyone listening here, if you don't feel like you have a strong connection, if you just say, I want a relationship with God, I want a relationship with this source connection, guide me. Done. Game over. And if you trust from that moment forward and you do your meditation, you do your prayer and say, hey, what do I do today? You've already declared what you want, right? If you order something on Amazon, guess what? It's coming. And so you could just count on it. It's coming, it's coming. But you check in, like anything to do today, anything to do today, anything to do today, or this moment. If you feel a little off, like, hey, I feel a little off, what's going on? Right? Get curious, allow, and it'll expand in the way that it does for you. It won't necessarily come through words like mine. I'm very verbal, but it might come through pictures. It might come through song, right? It'll come through however it needs to come through. But say yes to the door it's coming through, and the doors that can come through will expand. But when we say, oh, well, that's not right because Mark said it's supposed to be like that, it's like, no, now you just cut off the doorway
Right,
that
right.
you have willingness to go through. Like go through the doorway you're willing to go through. And if you can do that and keep surrendering, keep leaning in, the rest will start to move into position to support the full expression of what you're capable of. It's like planting the apple seed. If you plant the apple seed and give it the sunlight and the water and the nourishment, guess what? The tree's already in the seed. Well, we all have that baked in, but you have to nourish it. You've got to give it the time. You've got to give it the love. You've got to be present with it and listen. Like, what does the tree need? What do I need? Right? I might need to go to church, and you might need to go to the woods. Great. You know, honor yourself. And the more you honor yourself in small things, the more you'll honor yourself in big things. And it starts really small. It starts literally with, God, show me what a yes is, right? Show me what a no is. And you'll start to realize like how God's already trying to convey and communicate. I did this with my son, and he had if you'd like, I'll share the story, but I'll pause so you can take it in a different direction if you'd like. But it's a great story about how to start.
Mm.
I want to go on forever. I'm looking at the clock going, we're just about done. And Mark's just getting started. What do you want to do, Lisa? You want to keep going?
I want to
What
hear
do
the
you want to do?
story.
All right, let's hear the story.
All right. So my son, same son who helped me get into writing books, frankly, he was 9 at the time. Now he's 20. And he had finished his first year of college and toward the end of, or was finishing. And he said, hey, Dad, I think I might want to not go to college anymore and become a pilot. And I said, oh, okay, that's a change. Oh, great. Uh, what's driving that? All that stuff, right? So we agree that he's going to fly over Easter break, see if he even likes it because he had never flown before in himself, right? So he did, and he loved it. And so he set up over the summer. He was going to get his pilot's license. He wasn't going to go back to school. He was just going to become a pilot and raring to go. Very excited. And my wife Liz and I were encouraging him. And he goes to the first or second full lesson, and he didn't like it. But he had made this big deal that he wanted to not go to school and all this stuff, right? And we were just flowing with it. Like, hey, look, you got to follow what's best for you, but at least see if you like it. So he sat on the couch and he said, hey, Dad, can you help me with something? I'm like, yeah, sure. He said, well, I'm not sure what to do. I said, well, ask the Holy Spirit. And he said, well, how do I do that? Uh, I said, well, first of all, establish a communication. I said, so close your eyes and breathe. So he did, just taking nice few breaths. And if you're watching this, you can pause the video and breathe. So he got centered, and I knew it's like, okay, there he is. I said, okay, so now just ask the Holy Spirit. Say, Holy Spirit, show me a yes. And he did. And his head went like this. And if you can't see, his head started nodding up and down. But he wasn't nodding it. He didn't say anything, but it was clear his head was nodding. I said, okay, you got it? He said, yeah, I got it. I said, okay, so now say, Holy Spirit, now show me a no. So he says it, Holy Spirit, show me a no. And his head starts doing this. And he opens his eyes like, what just happened? And I said, dude, this is the beginning of developing a relationship, so that you know how to tap in to the fullness of who you are. And I said, so he got that. And I said, now ask the question. And I can't remember the exact question, but it was something around, do I continue with flying school? And he asked, and his head's doing this, and he's like, no. And it was so he got. It's like he didn't have to ask me, right? I could have told him whatever it was that was in my content and my story, but it was important for him to get his own answer, and it's important for all of us to get our own answer. And if you've never done that, you can start with that just simple exercise. Not that your head's going to go up and down and side to side. Notice what happens for you. Maybe have a pen in your hand and notice that maybe you draw a certain shape when it's a yes and a different shape when it's a no. There's lots of different ways to do this. I mean, the core of this is obviously kinesiology, but it's a different level of kinesiology where it's like you don't need to use a pendulum or do anything. Your energy will show you. And if you direct it toward a pure source, then you can trust that, okay, if I call Maura on the phone, guess what? Maura is going to answer. Lisa can't answer because I didn't call Lisa's phone. So if I call the Holy Spirit's answering because I said, Holy Spirit, show me, right? So use your own faith and how you want to do it, but do it. Like start learning. How do you communicate with the deeper parts of yourself so that the gift of the Holy Spirit, the gift of the great unwinder of all of our errors, can come out and start working in your life? And it will show you how to do that. And all you have to do is, it can't take the action for you, but it will guide you perfectly every time. Unless you're in hostility or fear. If you're in hostility or fear, you got to unwind the hostility and fear and let go of all the goals and the trauma and the things that are around that, so you can get to the place where you can hear clearly, because it'll get distorted through your distortions. And so you do want to be centered when you do this. And that's why prayer is so powerful, meditative prayer is so powerful. All right, that's the story.
Well,
Love it.
your stories are awesome. So beautiful, so important, so helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You're
That's why
welcome.
it's so important to really connect inside and to reintegrate ourselves so that we can be standing from this space of inner knowing, the space of power, the space of getting our own answers, instead of trying to rely on other people's answers for us. So that's so important. Thank you so much for that, Mark.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Yes. Get your
And
own
that's
answers.
and that's the healing process.
Mhm.
You know, when we integrate um, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual by asking and listening and trusting and following guidance and taking action. And then you evaluate, or you ask again and you listen again, or both.
Hmm. And
it's,
it's
it's
and there's no finish line. That's another big issue a lot of people have, is they think like they gotta rush through it in order to get to the end. Like there's no end. Like so just embrace the situation you're in today, no matter what it is, and recognize, okay, I'm here. I get to choose today. And if I mess up, guess what? In the next day, I can choose again. But what I found is there's a gap that closes where it becomes less and less interesting to go out of the narrow gate, if you will,
mm,
right? Because we've explored the stuff. It's like, well, that didn't work, that didn't work. But every time I listen to this, it works. So I'm going to keep listening, keep listening, keep listening. And we get refined, 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 refined in the fire, if you will, until we're so pure that now we become the vessel that a lot of really cool things can happen quickly because rhythms quicken. I mean, I could have never written whatever, 9 books in a few years if I sat down, but by going through this process, like books are just flowing. They're just flowing. They're just flowing. It's like people are like, how you do that? It's like, I don't. God, I can only do it in full relationship with God. That's it. Like without God, none of these would be here. None. There wouldn't be a word on a page. So I'm so thankful. I so appreciate, being here and sharing uh, what we've shared together.
We appreciate you too. Just what you just shared about the narrow path, that's something that something I've been involved in and reading and connecting to has been speaking about that narrow path. And I didn't really have a connection to the meaning of it. And what you just shared got me connected to that.
Oh,
So
good.
thank you so much. Yeah, that's beautiful. We need each other. Just,
We all
we
do.
need each other and we need to support each other in the things that we're doing that are helping us to support each other. And so that's why we're doing this podcast. And we're so grateful to you for coming on and look forward to connecting with you further in whatever way shows up.
Awesome. Thank you both.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank
So
you.
how can people connect with you? I know you've got the ocoalition.com/books on your image there for anybody who's not
Yeah.
watching this on video. But
Yeah.
yeah, tell us.
Yeah. If you're interested, I mean, you could email me at mark@thelowlyprophet.com. Which is the first book in the series, mark@thelowlyprophet.com, and I'll get an email there. But the ocoalition.com/books, you can actually go start reading any of the three books. The future books will be there. They're pretty good, and they all have programs with them. So, because the Lowly Prophet, when it was written, it's like, okay, this is witnessing the characters go through the story, and there's a program to teach you the tools so that as you're reading, you can actually practice the tools. So, for example, after chapter two or three, there's a little exercise. It's like do this exercise while reading the next two chapters, right? More important than the content is doing the exercise. You'll get the content, but do the exercise because while someone's reading, they can actually go through a healing process with each of the books. So that's a part of the. It's not just a book.
Nice. I like it.
But yeah, reach out to either go start reading some of that stuff, yeah, or reach out and email. Happy to connect.
Fantastic. So if you're watching the show, check out the show notes because all of the links will be there. So thank you so much, Mark. This was such a great show, and it was so beautiful getting to know you and hear your story and feel your beautiful energy. So thank you so much for sharing with us today.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thanks for letting me be here.
It was our
Thanks,
pleasure.
Mark. Well, we'll see you all in the next Hoping Healing podcast. And until then,
Happy
happy
healing.
healing.